Hello everybody and happy St. Patrick's Day. This is the day where everybody's Irish, so I hope you have your corned beef and cabbage and carrots in your crock pot with a little bit of beer. I hope you've made your Irish soda bread from a monk in a monastery in Ireland and have a good Guinness stout ready for you when you get home. Today we're going to color plan Celtics. It's the perfect day to do so. And I'm going to take you through some different Celtics that you can color plan, show you some examples. And it's not as complicated as you think it is. And also for those of you who Oxford punch, we'll go over some velvets that you can punch with. So let's get started. And I want to thank Rug Hooking Magazine for this opportunity. This is their latest issue on the stands, so make sure you have it in your collection. All right, so let's get started with a Celtic. The first Celtic we're going to do is the Celtic of all Celtics. It's the claddagh. And the claddagh is the Irish symbol. It is the Irish symbol for brides. It's the Irish symbol for those that are not brides, that want to show they're available. Loyalty, heart, love, hand, everything is here. So in this claddagh, and this is just a little riser of a claddagh, it's basically three colors. And this is a great basic claddagh to start with, or a Celtic to start with. If you notice, I left spaces. I did not connect the knots and interlock the knots. The reason is it allows you not to outline. We don't want to outline. We don't want to have to fussy with this. It's a small piece. We let the background have all the motion. It's a dyed piece. This was actually an as-is skirt. You can use a black, a blue, something like Old Crow, or a dyed piece, and it is hooked. Now, what happens is, here is your knots. The spaces are there in the pattern, and you hook the shape you see. We are using our tool direction of hooking in order to create this. Even the crown, here are the spaces. Of course, the heart and the hand, but these allow it to stand up from the background. This allows the claddagh to show as it should. The background is a combination of two pieces of dyed wool. And doing a Celtic in this way is not uncommon. The scarf that I was wearing earlier is from the Book of Kells. And if you notice, in here, in the Book of Kells, your spaces are in between. This is a two-tone Celtic. This is a two-tone Celtic. And these spaces in between create the knots or the wrap of the knots. So we are really keeping in with the Celtics and doing it in a simplified form. Some great wools to do this in. So if you're going to hook this and you want this to be the darkest that it can be, you can go to something like our hummingbird. This is a dyed piece of wool. It has highs and lows, but as it hooks as one piece. Your background can be a combination, or it can be something that you like. This is Fields of Shamrock if you like the green. If you're more into a blue-green, more like what I hooked, a less traditional, this is our Nantucket. Spearmint, I'm sorry, spearmint. This is our spearmint. We also have a Nantucket, and if you notice, that is what I've used here, is the spearmint in the background. And by using these two colors only, small piece, you create a Celtic. Great as a table mat, over a door, to give as a wedding gift. It just works perfectly. So that is the claddagh. Now if you don't want to use dyed wool, some people do not want to use the dyed wool. Well, we can accommodate it in another way with textures. Here is inky. You can use inky for the black. For your background to get the modeling, of course we would use something that had a lot of oomph to it. Something like Seaside Stripe. Something like Seaside Stripe, where you get all the colors, you would cut it across the stripe. You don't always have to cut it with the stripe. If you're a traditionalist, you would use shades of sage, and you could do it across the stripe. So maybe black isn't your thing. You don't like the black. Okay, so let's use purple. This purple haze It's not flat, it's got a lot of oomph to it, and it especially has a lot of oomph when you put it with seaside stripe. So here is a textured way to hook the claddagh. Great ideas, great way to do it. So suppose you're a blue person and you like your blues and your blue-greens. Well, you can do that as well. Your claddagh can be in this color, or if you want to ramp it up, in this color. And then your background can be this, which this fades into, but this one pops off of. So you need the claddagh to pop, and it would pop off of this. This is the most subtle of all the claddaghs. If you like mixed media and you like velvet, we have this beautiful Prussian blue that can be used, and then you can use your seaside stripe as a background. It looks very beautiful. The velvet would add another dimension to it. It's a good way to try the velvet if you haven't tried it before. So this is, again, another option with a little mixed media. As I say, your options are endless, and they truly are. So maybe this is not for you, but you want to try a pillow. So you want to do the basic Celtic, and this is a Celtic snowflake. It's very basic. What you do and what you get with the pattern, or when you have a Celtic, you can take an image of it. In this case, we have the paper copy. And when you have a paper copy like that, use that to your advantage. So what you have to do is decide, what do you want highlighted? This is a little different. This is the next phase of a Celtic. So you have right here, your first Celtic's coming up right here like this. Here we go. There we are. Here we go. Just like that. Notice how that comes to light very quickly. There's your first Celtic knot. And your first Celtic knot, if you want this to be predominant, to show like a snowflake, it doesn't, we call it a snowflake. It's your first Celtic wrap is right there. Okay? So now we have the second Celtic knot. And the second Celtic knot can come into here like this. Okay, so here is our second Celtic. It's a very nice thing. And a little hint when you're hooking. We hook in this direction. So what you would do to hook this effectively is you'll take this section right to here, this section right to here, you'll outline it, and then you'll fill it. Your direction of hooking helps to anchor your Celtic. And then you have other options. You don't just have to fill it in with a background. If you filled it in with a third color, your third color can come in to create another level. And your next level would be in here, your diamonds that show up. And they become apparent now as you hand color this in. And then this in here, what is left would be background. So you can make it a 2-layer Celtic or a 3-layer Celtic. That is up to you. But as you color these in, you can see how they wrap, you can see what happens, and then anything that is left would be your background. And we don't square this off or circular. This can be anything you would like, any size you would like, you would square it off for yourself. This makes a great ring bearer's pillow at a wedding to show the two families joining. Some color plans for this. You can go very non-traditional, okay? You can go very non-traditional. So suppose you wanted to do it in colors that the bride would like, or colors for spring. You want to use this a little more. So here we have blush. Here we have cloud cover. And then we have a little gold. Okay, so your first knot could be where I have the pink and blush, where the green is could be the blue, and where the red is the gold. Very soft, not as definitive as the claddagh, maybe too soft, but gives you a really soft look. Maybe too soft, you need to ramp up this snowflake. Well, we can just come over here and we can add in this pink velvet. So this again would be blush, this would be the pink velvet, this would be the yellow, and maybe you need the something blue, so your background could be cloud cover. Another direction to go in with this is your background could be rosy. And when your background is rosy, it's a neutral. So using those same colors, not as defined, but still very pretty. You can take the blush out, move in our old favorite tea berry. Maybe you don't like the gold. Okay, we can take that out and we can put in berry parfait. Here we go, cut it across the stripe, cut it with the stripe, and do the little internal in blush. So background, first stripe, first Celtic tea berry, the snowflake in the berry stripe, or vice versa. Where the red is, a little bit of blush, very even toned, very nice. But then you'll say, well, Lisanne, I really like the pop that you get. I really want to pop on this. How do we pop this? Well, you can pop it with dyed wool, and you can pop this with, this is peacock tail. So this could be your snowflake. Your outside ring, you can go with a green to pop it a little bit more, or a blue-green like this, a texture, combine the two. So we have peacock tail, we have mystical plaid, and then if you just wanted a calm background, you could just put a background in, a very soft background. If you wanted this to be filled in with a different color, we could go for the teal of it, or we could pop this entirely with green shutter, peacock tail, and then let the background be very soft with mystical. Options are endless. It's up to you what your color palette is. I could switch these around for hours and pick new ones all the time. Here's another one right here, just like that. So these are just different ways to look at it, but when you sit down to look at this Celtic and you hand color it in, you have to decide which of these knots you want predominant. For me, I chose the snowflake. You may choose the outer ring. Either one is up to you. But this is also a good basic Celtic if you have never hooked a Celtic before. And again, it makes a great ring bearer's pillow. That's our Celtic snowflake. The next one is a lot of fun, but when you look at it at first, you think, well, it's kind of blah, Lisanne. This is our Celtic wrap wreath, and you could use it for a candle. Again, you can use it for a ring bearer's pillow. You can use it for a pillow, whatever you would like. And it's not one color, two colors, it's up to you. Again, here's our picture of it. And when you start to look at these, you have to decide. So for me, I'm going to start right in here, and I'm going to come to where it joins, and I'm going to put that one in, just like this. Okay, and I'm going to come in here just like this, because this lets me see what I want. Okay, so I have that. Now, something else appears now because of what we've colored in. So the next thing that we color in, we have another color we can introduce out here. And by introducing that out here, that's a second color. Does it have to be 3? No. You can make this a 2-tone and make it completely go that way. Or you can make it a 3-tone and create an internal wrap inside. Just like that. So it can be simple. You could do this whole thing in a dip spot and just let it hook the way the dip spot is. You can do 3 colors, you could do 2 colors. It's up to you what you would like. And again, this is a little more complicated, not as much, but it allows you to use your colors. You can color it right onto the linen and do a background or not do a background. So we can pick some colors for this, and sometimes you want to use it for a multi-purpose. So here's some color plans for this. Here's all texture. Here's our first one in all texture. There's 3 colors. They blend and you don't have to hook the background. We have Very Berry, Yorkshire Stripe, and Berry Parfait. They all go together. And for some that may be just a little too blah, a little too neutral. Then you could ramp it up a different way. We can take out one of them. We can take Yorkshire Stripe out. We can ramp this up again with a purple, with the Berry Stripe. Leave out the Very Berry and bring in Tea Berry. Here's another third one. So that's another option. You can go with a mix again. So we can go again with 3 colors or 2 colors. And here we have Yarmouth Blue. We could go with Yarmouth Blue, Mystical, and then bring in a real pop of Peacock Tail. And Peacock Tail is a dip spot. It goes from light to dark. You could hook the entire piece in Peacock Tail if this was your color. Very nice. It would be very stunning. Also in this, you can introduce a velvet. You could introduce a green velvet. You could hook it in 3 velvets. It's up to you. And we have a pile of wool in front of us, which is always so much fun. If you hooked it in the 3 velvets, you can hook it in any colors you like. I'm actually punching right now, Oxford punching in these 3 colors, like this. This is another accent color. You can do it all in velvets. You can do it in velvets and wools. It's entirely up to you what you want the emphasis to be. Dyed wools, textured wools, combinations. Your combinations are endless. So maybe you've tried a few of the simple Celtics and you want to move up to a more complicated one. Our Celtic wrap thistle is a good one to start with. Because you have many elements in here, this is where you can introduce your purples, your greens, your golds. You can sculpt. You can sculpt these. You can make each of the Celtic knots 1 color, 2 colors. You can do your cross down the center in a gold. This is really a traditional piece. It's a nice piece. But again, it's not overly complicated as long as you break it out into its pieces. And when you break it out into its pieces, it has a lot more to it. Again, a paper copy. This is what it looks like. So now we're going to go to a paper copy. And when you look at the paper copy at first, you think, uh-oh, it seems to be outlined. Well, you have your leaves, which you can do in a green. Here is where you can sculpt your thistle. You can use a velvet in here. And then you have your Celtic knots. If you notice, these touch each other. You can use 2 tones of green. So you can use a yellow green and a blue green, 2 tones of blue green, a dyed and a textured. So if this one was a dyed piece, this was a textured piece, this would be dyed, this would be textured, and I'll show you a color plan shortly. By using one of our tools, which is textured versus dyed, you create space in between. For the knots, you can do them in 1 color, a dip spot, whatever you would like. You can do them in 2 colors. But good colors for this are greens, purples, golds with either a natural background, don't hook it, or a very simple background like rosy or latte or something like that, very, very soft. So this is the Celtic wrap thistle. So let's talk about some colors for the Celtic wrap thistle. Of course, we would need a purple, and even a dyed purple would work. You don't have to just use this, but if you're going to sculpt, this would sculpt beautifully. You could sculpt your bottom with this if you so chose, or you can sculpt the top. So if this is one of your pieces, the other piece, and we've got wool all over, so we got to pull some out. You could do it where it's not purple per se, but you could do it with this as your thistle. You can just sculpt one, hook one. You have purple in your stash, that's the way to go. Your greens. Your greens are really a lot of fun, and you should play with them. You have these two that make a green. Each of these leaves, one would be the stripe, one would be the dyed piece. You can go with traditional green, not a blue green. You can go with a traditional green, fields of shamrock. Make the other leaf a traditional texture or a little bit of a blue-green texture like mystical. You can go with fields of shamrock, khaki velvet, up to you. Your knots can be a gold, and they can be as vibrant as you like or as subtle as you like. Here's a great one to hook. It's a herringbone, but if you really like bright colors, you can go with yellow topaz that has the highs and the lows in it. Might be too bright for you, or you can go with this as your the golden herringbone and use the gold velvet to create the wraps. So this is a more traditional palette right here, just like that. So this would be a very traditional palette, and you can add this in. You've got two velvets, some dyed and some textured. Good way to test everything, a good way to create a great traditional piece. And it doesn't mean that you can't color plan it in pinks, in blues, in teals, whatever your color palette is. If you wanted to do it in the purple, and you wanted to do it in a very different way, you can do it in your purples and then bring in your teals, like that. And by bringing in your teals, you're taking away your traditional green, which is fine, but you're bringing in the teals and the purple for this. Then you can always add in either a velvet for the center to keep it that way, a texture that has both the colors in it, or deepen it with a dyed piece. Many different options. All the options are up to you. Now, sometimes you do not have to do a Celtic that is so defined. Somebody had asked about that, and we have some examples right here. Here is our Celtic rabbits. This is more of hares, not rabbits per se. The rabbits entwine. They are done in pretty much neutrals. Yes, their tails are sculpted. And this was just a dyed piece, and all of the knots were hooked that way, highs and lows. You can see the knots. These are similar to the knots we just looked at, the Celtic knots we just looked at. The rabbits are entwined, but it's not as defined. You have to look at it. You have to see it. Traditional green background. So this is another Celtic that is a little more subtle. Another subtle Celtic is our Celtic shamrock. And the Celtic shamrock was done with a mix of greens, of dyed greens, and then one texture. This can be done very nicely. This is very subtle, very, very subtle, and you can do it that subtle. If you like a more subtle look where you don't want as much emphasis, you could use something like our fields of shamrock and then come in here very subtly for the shamrock itself. Or you can use just a very pale texture such as tea berry to hook the shamrock in. Very subtle. They do not have to be in your face and overly designed. So this is more of a subtle. And what this is just a one line of a texture cut. A stripe would work very well for this, and it's just cut and hooked. Now, if you want this to stand up like little soldiers, you may have to hook it once with a scrap piece of wool, hook around it, pull it out, and then hook it again, like you do for lettering. You don't have to, but if you find that you're losing the shape, you may have to do that. So this is a very subtle, very lovely Celtic. Another way you could do the Celtic is when you have the stripe to hook the shamrock. You can cut across the stripe to get all the colors you want, and then just set it on a purple background. That is another way to do that. Very subtle, won't see it as much, not as such a bold Celtic. The last Celtic is another Celtic cross, and it's simply done. It's done with a rosy background, and it's just done in 2 colors, which you probably have in your stash, or you can find a purple and a green. And they're single line Celtics. There are highs and lows. They're not purposely placed. They're just cut and pulled, and they fall as they may. But this is a single line Celtic. Each of the shapes in here, 2 colors in a background, each of the colors in here, if you notice, it's direction of hooking that draws your eye around, and done in puzzle pieces out here. If you've never hooked a single line Celtic, after you hook your purple piece, then you go back in and fill. Then you come in with your green, and then you fill so you don't lose your spaces. That is the order of hooking. So I hope I've given you a lot of options, a lot of color plans. My goodness, the table is just loaded. There's a lot of great color plans you can do, a lot of great Celtic patterns. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you enjoy your St. Patrick's Day, and may the road rise up to meet you until we see you next month. Bye.